So let me push that off then and say, well, that's what's going on globally. What's happening down at regional scale, which is where, I think an awful lot of the richest, probably most important stuff is going on. But it's really hard, and that's why I'm not going to talk about it much. The most overwhelming thing you get when you look out there at what's going on in the world at the level of corporations or states or regions and say, well, what are you guys doing with the sustainability thing, is how differently each of them put together the pieces of what sustainable development would mean to them. And there's always a component in it of what are you trying to sustain. There's something about nature or the Earth's life support systems or actually functioning social communities. There's always something about people, but it can be improve the objective conditions of individuals, life expectancies and so on. It can be talking about the character of an economy, getting GNP growth and jobs up. Again, it can be talking about what we're trying to improve is social well-being, social capital in the sense that Bob Putnam talks about it. All of these things are going on, and there's no one version that by now anyone's even trying to push. The power of the concept, again, somewhat like the concepts of justice and freedom, is that there's a lot of room for people to make versions that work for them, constrained only by the fact that you can't make it anything you want it to be, because people will look at you and just laugh at you if you try to change these things to be just in your own self-interest, just greenwashing, or whatever. So it is a bumptious, complex, but interestingly, highly innovative and unexpected arena of activities going on out there. And increasingly, the function of the global level is to connect the successes. That is, let people in one part of the world at one scale of activity know what's going on elsewhere. Things like the Roy Award program that Amanda runs around here are doing precisely that kind of activity. We high grade where have there been really neat sustainability partnerships going on and tell the rest of the world about it. So it's trying to mine the creativity bubbling up from below, cross-reference it around, critique it from the side of the broad sustainability notions, but using our variety as a source of ways of moving forward. I'm not going to talk about these much. These happen to be, I just sat down and said, okay, what are my favorite examples, the ones I've gotten most out of learning? And that obviously is mostly reflecting that I don't know about some of the best ones, so they don't get on my list. I can talk about any of these afterwards, but I'm going to give you sort of the one-sentence version of what's neat now, because I do want to end back down at the individual level on things that folks like us might do until we become the governors of states or whatever. My favorite is actually an American-grown one, Kings County. That's the county surrounding Seattle. In which an incredibly innovative guy named Ron Sims, then the incredibly exalted position of the county commissioner, now in the Obama administration as the head of Housing and Urban Development's sustainability initiatives, said, well, gee, I hear about this climate stuff. We should do something with that. I could be a leader. So he led and said, climate, we got to solve the climate problem here in Kings County. And just about was thrown out of office. He said, you got to be out of your mind. That's going to cost us money. So he retreated. He happened to have in the neighborhood a really good installation at the University of Washington that was building some of these decision support tools out of the best science had to offer. They talked back and forth, and Sims 2 was him coming back and saying, look, gang, citizens of King County, for the next umpteen years, people in the United States and the rest of the world are going to be deciding where they want to live. And it's not a mystery to them that it's going to be turbulent times and all sorts of changes in the environment and so on. You're going to want to live in nice places that are pretty robust, both to the kinds of environmental changes that might happen, but also the kinds of regulations that might come down the line to have us deal with them. So how about this? We're going to build, we're going to redo our planning for water distribution and roads and energy provision, looking ahead 40 years, so that when we replace things at a pretty orderly normal clip. We're going to do it in ways that buffer us to a whole range of possible changes in climate, that get us out ahead of dirty energy, so much so that whatever regulations come down, we'll be doing it anyway. We're going to be the place everybody in the world wants to come live. And then our problems are just going to be how to keep people out, rather than how to keep jobs up and this being a cool place. Gets reelected by a landslide, begins to move stuff forward. Cool, sustainable development. But anchored in this wonderful leadership that saw reframing the problem in terms of what we can do to be a better, more cool and wonderful place to live, rather than fight off this problem, fight off that problem. You can tell the same thing here. We've had a major reduction in Brazil in the rates of deforestation in much of Amazonia, bubbling up through a set of local initiatives, but crucially here, capped with some clever supportive legislation at the national level, and then some amazing initiatives by people, global level, in this case, Norway. Our Norwegian delegation was last week, in a system that has both had local states in Brazil reshaping how they use land to fit themselves better, have that supported by the national government, and have that supported by outside donors that are willing to say there's some common interest of humankind in slowing down rates of deforestation, so we'll help pay for people who keep their lands covered with forest. Now, people here who know vastly more about this than I do, so I'm going to shut up. John Briscoe, one of our colleagues on the faculty here, tells an extraordinary story about the water, which has traditionally been a thing you can never cost out, and therefore everybody uses vastly too much of it. In Australia, in the Murray-Darling Basin, they have actually moved to a system of not water is for everybody, but water is both things you have property rights in, but access to essential water needs are guaranteed to all people. And they have begun to build on those two legs a much more sane and balanced way of handling the needs of water for economic growth and human livelihood, but doing it in ways that are sustainable over the long run, which the Murray-Darling wasn't. Some wonderful payment for ecosystem services initiatives we can talk about later going on in places we work in Kenya. And of course, the much maligned European Union experiments in building up a carbon emissions trading systems, ones that have had more than their share of failures, which of course the United States hasn't had because we never tried. They're now very good at this game, and in fact the biggest source of failure was the United States failing to put a price on carbon and therefore cutting the bottom out from their market. But note, all of these are local to regional initiatives, and you can all build your own versions into them, from which huge amounts of stuff are to be learned about what sustainability might even be for a group of people in different parts of the world, and on instrumentally how you get to it. And that's sort of this regional scale thing, of which there will be a whole lot of trading of notes going on at the Rio conference and the work up to it.